Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week we are back on the Alfarrari, and there's a bunch of little things that I need to sort out. Alright guys, welcome back, and those who have been following know that this is the Alfarrari. This is my 1973 Alfa Romeo GTV 2000 that is no longer a 2000, it is now a 3600. It's got a 3.6 litre Ferrari V8 from a Ferrari 360. If you missed the last episode on this, I'll put a link above so you can catch up, and like always, do the things like subscribe and comment. It all helps out that crazy algorithm. Last week in the Frankenhall episode, I did actually do a fair bit of work on the Alfarrari, more than I thought I would with the exhaust, but now it is not banging and crashing, and it's actually sounding so much better. There is some sort of little buzz rattle that's underneath the car that I'm going to have a look at, but there's a few other things that I want to tackle on this moving forward. The main one that I want to tackle first is my alternator bracket. Now, I built this alternator bracket quite some time ago, several years ago now, as this took me a long time to build, and the adjuster has actually broken the worlds. It fell off after my Shannon's track day. I had to quickly tack it back on again. Another piece broke off, and some other time in there it also broke, and actually last week it broke another piece again, and yeah, basically it's too brittle. It's not made very well. Basically, I think it's a lot of the MIG welds are very brittle. They're much harder, and that is not handling the vibrations, and they're cracking and breaking. And now I have a CNC plasma table. So the aim today is let's get this up in the air, get the bracket off, and see if I can design something in one piece and TIG weld the pieces together, and hopefully that will have the strength to handle the vibrations and stop it breaking. So first things first is to get the old bracket off and see what we can do about making something that's a little bit more robust. It's not the greatest design because one of the bolts is actually behind the alternator itself, but I get it off without too much drama, and then it's time to strip it down. Alright, so this is my alternator bracket that I made up way back when I was first building the car, and you can see that to get the spacing correct for my pivot, this is where the alternator bolts on at the top. I used these bits of hex stock that I had, drilled them out and made them into the standoff, and on the bottom this was my homemade adjuster using bits of I think I might have used bits of angle iron, I can't remember, but basically I had to sort of cut it all out by hand, and it's snapped off a couple of times. It snapped off here, it snapped through here, it's broken in multiple sections where I've just kept cobbling it together. It's not good enough. So I think I need to cut it off and come up with a whole new design that hopefully will actually hold together for the long run. That's the plan anyway. So to design the bracket, I start by taking a bunch of measurements, and then I take them into CAD and start trying to work out the arc in which the alternator is going to travel, so that I can draw up a nice tensioner that will work with the bolt spacing of the alternator bracket. And after sitting for a while working on my design, I find something that I'm happy to run with, and then I send it over to the plasma table to cut it out some nice thick plate. Then it's time to clean up all the slag and just make sure all of the edges are nice and smooth. I did add a little bit extra that I thought I was going to fold over, and it's just so thick to fold I ended up just cutting the base of my bracket off, and I'll come up with something else in a minute. Once I'm happy with that, I just make sure the mock-up seems to work the way I want it to, and then I need to fold over the top of the bracket for the adjuster bolt.
It needs to be at 90 degrees to the locking bolt that goes in the slot on the side, and I cut, bend and weld that nice and solid. Now I'm happy with the basic design. I can mock it up into place using the alternator obviously to get my spacing correct and tack it onto the base plate. And you can see here I've made another piece of plate that I have welded my bracket to extend the original base plate where it had broken previously. Again, making sure that the alternator fits the entire time, and I reinforce my bracket with several layers of TIG weld just to make sure I have a really secure bond. As I've mentioned in the past, I do like the TIG weld as it's a much softer weld than the MIG weld and a lot less brittle. Now I'm happy with the adjustment slot. I need to drill the hole for my tensioner in the end, then fitting it up and making sure it all travels through its full range of movement as it's supposed to. Now I'm happy with the layout. I add a gusset to the tensioner end of my bracket and also a nice big reinforcing rib on the back side, tying both sides of my welded piece together. So hopefully it is nice and strong and I won't have any breaking anymore.
Alright, well that was a bunch of work, but now using CAD I have a much prettier looking bracket. This is also double the thickness of the last one. The last one was 2.5 millimeters. This is at least 5 or 6. It's a nice solid bracket, and I've put some reinforcing on the top where the tensioner goes in, and this is all nice and solid here. And the base bracket I didn't want to remake. The alternator is already in the correct spot. The pivot is all in the right spot. Everything is there. It lines up nicely with the belt, so none of that is an issue. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel there. The trouble was that the bracket had snapped off along this angle here, so I had to weld another end on it. So what I did is I bridged it on both sides. There's a heap of layers of TIG welds there that was reinforcing all of this bracket, and then I put a rib on the back as well to reinforce it. So this should be super robust now. So I'm going to give it a coat of paint, and then we can reinstall this and we move on.
And for paint, I'm using the super hard wearing black epoxy that I am a huge fan of for this sort of thing.
Alright, so we've got the alternator bracket sorted and drying. So the next thing that I want to tackle is something that's been bugging me about this car ever since I put it together, was this door handle. It's been super hard to get into, and now it's not working at all. And also the internal door handle keeps getting loose. So I'm just not happy with how much tension is on this. I need to get in there, readjust it. So let's get in, take the door trim off and see if we can do something about it.
So first things first is to remove the door trim. And once this is out of the way, then I can start having a look at the lock and just trying to work out exactly what is going wrong and why it's not working properly. But it definitely helps with the window up, not down. And it's now I spend a whole lot of time pulling things apart and trying to work out the issue. And in the end, I end up removing the external handle, the lock itself, the central locking motor, everything to try and work out where the issue was. And eventually I've worked out that it's actually the handle itself is catching on the inside of the door skin. This meant I had to try and hit it first with a hand file and realised that was going to take forever, and I went back with the air finger sander and I ground back the inner lip of the door handle hole, which was where the handle was binding. And once I checked that the inner and outer handles were all working as they should, I reassembled.
Okay, that was a lot of work, but I have a door handle now and it's just nice and easy. I can actually pop it open. It was interfering with the lip of the door skin because this is a new door skin. I hadn't clearanced the return of the edge of the handle enough, and that was where it was actually binding. So I've sorted that out, and after a lot of backwards and forwards trying to work out where it was actually touching, I couldn't actually see where it was binding, pull the whole thing apart. In the end, it was quite simple. So now we have a very nice to open door. Next.
And it's now a day later, so the paint is dry on my alternator bracket and I can reinstall it, so that's another job marked off the list.
That bracket looks much better. That's the way we want to see it.
So I'm happy with everything outside the car for the time being, so the next job requires removing the steering wheel and having a look at my switchgear.
All right, so the next thing that I want to tackle is getting the indicators in this car to self-cancel. Now, Tim, who's a viewer, sent me this mini self-cancelling indicator, and it's quite a good system because it's very, very simple. The only issue I'm currently having is that it's designed for a very small shaft. Basically, all it requires is a little lump, a little screw or something put into the steering shaft to trigger it to cancel the indicators. The only issue is that I obviously can't drill into my steering shaft. That's not a thing. I can't weld onto it. I can't touch that. But what I'm thinking I maybe can do is make up some sort of piece that I can weld, fix somehow to the bottom of the steering wheel that will then trip the cancelling portion of the indicator. But to get that all to work, I need to have a look at my existing indicator switch, which I can remove, but obviously I've still got my lights connected to that. I'd like to continue to use that if I can. So let's delve a little bit deeper and let's see what I can come up with.
And the first task is to open out the bracket mount on the mini indicator stalk.
I've been having a look at how I'm going to mount this indicator switch. So if we have a look at it a bit more closely, so you can see that when you turn the indicator on, this little tab here gets pushed forward. And basically the steering wheel would be going in this direction. As it comes back, it grabs hold of that tab and just pushes it down, and that is what returns the indicator back to center. Very simple design. I really like the simplicity. It's perfect for what I need. I don't need all the extra functionality of the modern indicators. If you watched previously, I did mess around with a Toyota indicator switch, but there's so many functions on the Toyota indicator stalk and most modern cars. This is just indicator. It doesn't do high beams and headlights and any other things. It's just up and down. There's a little light on the end which I can remove, but basically it's just the indicator, which is perfect for what I'm looking for. So to mount it, I had to actually grind this open a little bit further. Standard, it had a tiny little diameter of a Mini that it had to fit around. But the steering column that I have in the Alfarrari is larger, so I've ground that out, and I'm no longer going to be able to use these screws to hold it in because of the angle. Is now going to be bigger. The screws are going to interfere with the rest of the bracket, so I'm going to make the screws on the face. So I'm going to drill and tap into this on either side here.
So I start by center punching, drilling, and then tapping out the bracket. Then it's time to make up a bit of a template so that I can bolt on a bracket to the existing bracket to fit my indicators, as I don't really want to weld in my finished interior. And here I'm just cutting out a quick template out of some thin sheet to test the concept.
All right, so I've made up a temporary panel. So this piece of sheet metal here, it's a test. It's not even. You can see these two bolt holes aren't even. But basically I've just bolted top and bottom to the mount that I used previously for the old indicator. And then I've mounted a second set of screws mounting into the indicator itself, and it's nice and solid and it works as an indicator should. At the moment, that is doing indicator things. I can change the stalk and all that stuff later. Just wanted to get it sort of roughly there for a proof of concept. So if I stick my steering wheel on, let's just double check. At the moment, there is still clearance for this to move and the steering wheel to turn and do what it needs to do. Now I need to see if I can do something to make the self-cancelling function.
So it's back to taking a bunch of measurements and then taking those over to CAD and start designing something that I can then cut out on the CNC plasma table.
All right, so I can remove my basic template now because I knew that worked, and I've got the one that I cut out on the plasma table, and that's looking pretty good. And then I have this odd little key looking thing, and what this is fits perfectly into the base of the steering wheel. And basically the plan is that this end I will bend into the right angle to be able to trip my cancel on the indicators. So now it's a bit of going to be a little bit of playing around and try and get everything lined up nicely. Let's bolt on my new adapter. Let's see how it all sits, and then let's see if we can line up my little tripping plate.
So first I bolt on the indicator onto the current column, and it seems to be nice and secure, which is good. And then I start trying to bend up my little key shaped piece, for want of a better term. And at first I thought it might need a step, like you see there, but that's not actually what I needed in the end. I drilled and tapped the base of the boss kit so that I can actually mount it to the boss, and you can see that I've changed the angle of the bracket a little bit more, but it is much more what I needed.
All right, so here's the little tab I made for the bottom of the steering wheel. It took me a long time to get the angle correct to actually line up with the little nubs on the indicator. And if I place it on now, let's show you. All right, so if I flick the indicator on and I turn the steering wheel, it returns it back. All right, so my next challenge is to try and fit the horn in. Now, today has been a lot of just sitting back and having a look and running through different concepts in my head, because making all of these things come together and function together and be serviceable and everything else is a challenge. Now, I still actually have the original indicator and headlights. The switch is still here and wired in. So at the moment I can actually unbolt all this and go back to using the current working system. I really like this original switch where you turn once for park lights, twice for full lights, and then high beam off and on, and then you can actually press it in and just flash the high beams. All of that works still, and it's quite a neat system, and it's the original system. I want it to be as close as possible. The trouble is that the indicator is mounted to that, and with this current system, the indicator portion fouls with this light switch, so it's all just a matter of trying to get this all to work. That's one issue, and then the next issue is fitting the horn. Now, the horn for the Mini, it's too close. I can't get the Mini horn to work, so I'm deleting that. Going back to the horn that I used before. Now, the horn that I used before, how I made that piece originally was pulling apart a Bulldog clip. One of these, I needed some spring steel. This is perfect for what I need, and just get it to sit on the right part of the base of the steering wheel so that I actually have a horn that works. I need to make up a new one of these because the old one is not going to work in the location I need. So it's a little bit of playing around, and let's see if we can get something to do the job.
In the end, I managed to use the previous horn tab that I'd made up, just mounted in a new hole and got everything lined up nicely. And then it was time to start butchering the existing light switch.
All right, I had to butcher the original switch, but I really want to keep the factory light switch. So I had to cut the end of it off and smooth it up so this will now fit. And I have to obviously rewire in the indicator wires into the mini switch and then make an extended mount to mount this onto because it no longer will fit where it used to. So now I need to make up a adapter bracket to be able to bolt this back in place.
So the plasma table is extremely handy to have, particularly when I keep cutting out the wrong bracket. So that was the wrong one, second one's wrong, and then the third one I managed to make something that is mostly in the right position, bend it up and realise it still needed some tweaking. So I went back and drew it up and cut out yet another one.
All right, so I built this bracket that's in behind here, and I've got enough space now to mount my light switch. That is mounted and solid, and I still have the indicator in front, so that is all there. The issue I now have is that, particularly if I'm in low beam, it's way too close to the gear stick. I need to bend this stalk, bend it up this way. Same with the indicator, needs to be bent up, particularly because the steering wheel sits a long way off. So if I sit the steering wheel on, you can see where the stalks are and where the steering wheel is. There is no way my hand is going to reach them. So they do need to be aimed up towards the steering wheel. It's fine to reach for the light switch as long as it's sort of more bent up to about here rather than being all the way back there. Although bending this is probably not going to work, actually thinking about it now, because this is going to tilt. So that's not going to work. I'm going to have to re-angle this bracket and get the whole bracket angled up this way to get it in the right spot. I may need to design and build this bracket another time. The indicator I can bend up, but this one, because it rotates, if I bend it, then the whole thing will rotate up around a big circle, and yeah, it won't sit where it needs to sit. So that needs a redesign.
So it's back on a CAD, and it's relatively simple to just extend the previous bracket a little bit, just so that I can have a little bit more room to bend things and get the clearance I need. And once I've cut it out, folded it up and remounted it, it's just time to carefully bend the indicator stalk.
All right, that's so much work, just tinkering, going backwards and forwards, just to try and get all these little tiny bits just the way we want them. But I'm happy with that now. So now I need to wire them into my plug so they all work.
And then I just have to rewire the new switch to the old wiring. Should be pretty straightforward because it's just a basic switch. What could go wrong? Then I mount it back in the car, install everything up, mount the steering wheel again, and then it's time to test it.
All right, moment of truth. Let's see if this goes haywire. If I let the smoke out, see what happens. Okay, something's not quite working on the indicator front. Well, that is frustrating. I've spent a lot of time on this, and there's obviously some little electrical thing that I have messed up here. It's not a super complicated circuit, so I can't have done too much, but I'm exhausted. It's Good Friday, and I've had enough for now, so I think I need to leave it and come back when I'm fresh. So I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, Luca de Montezemolo was seen by many as the saviour of Ferrari. From 1991 until he stood down in 2014, he stated on many occasions that Ferrari would never make an SUV. Porsche shocked the world as the first sports car manufacturer to make an SUV with the Porsche Cayenne in 2002, which was a booming success and literally saved the company. From then on, almost everyone followed, with Aston Martin, Lotus, Lamborghini, even Bentley and Rolls-Royce have made SUVs. So in September of 2022, Ferrari finally joined the SUV party with the Puro Sangue. Well, Almost. The Puro Sangue is the first four-door, four-seat car that Ferrari ever produced. And despite its appearance and its higher ground clearance, Ferrari insists that it is not an SUV, but an FUV, which is a Ferrari utility vehicle. Based on the Roma platform, the Puro Sangue is powered by Ferrari's 6.5-litre V12, similar to the one found in the 812. However, it has been detuned to only produce 715 horsepower. Interestingly, a charity trademarked the name Puro Sangue, which is a horse breed, back in 2013, and Ferrari have been in a legal battle with this company for 5 years to try to trademark the name themselves.
All right, well, there was a fair bit of stuff going on in this episode, just doing little tweaks, but I am very happy that we now have self-cancelling indicators. It's just got some small electrical gremlins that I need to sort out, but that will be sorted out relatively easily.
I hope so. I found that movie very scary when I was younger.
That's something I can do later. That's, yeah, and obviously I still need to make a new surround for the column now. The whole thing is changing, but that was going to have to happen anyway. That's another later project.
Yay. All right, like and subscribe. Let me just know what you think. And sorry for the little squeaks in the background. We've got the hounds with us today, and they are not pleased at having to sit and listen to us. Aren't you, girls? All right, like, subscribe, let Jeff know what you think about the videos. As I always say, he loves reading your comments. And of course, Patreon, help us out and support Jeff and his builds.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
The Puro Sangue is Ferrari's first four-door, five-seat car. The Puro Sangue is Ferrari's first door. No, the Puro Sangue is Ferrari's first four-door, The Puro Sangue is Ferrari's first four-door, four-seat car. Ferrari insists it is not an SUV, but a fun, F-U-N, otherwise known as a...
No, it's an FUV.
Oh, FUV, I read it as fun. That makes more sense. It's a fun. The Puro Sangue is the first four-door, four-car. The Puro Sangue is the first four-car... Yes, I'll do it again.
Yes.
But I got it.